If everyone could take their seat, please, so we can get started. Thank you. I'm going to open up this meeting now, which is our joint study session with the Planning Commission on the Zoning Code Comprehensive Update, our new districts, simplified processes, single-family district standards, and placemaking. So welcome to the Planning Commission. Unfortunately, we have only less than an hour to talk about this, which is something that probably we could take days talking about. So just to be as efficient as possible, I'm going to turn this over to Deanna, City Manager, to kick us off on this evening study session.
I too want to thank you for allowing us to have a joint session. This is one of many upcoming sessions where we'll be meeting in a joint manner so that we can get through these issues and have a more collaborative discussion as we prepare to bring forward to council a recommendation on the zoning update. I'm going to get over to Andrew just for sake of time.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Council, Planning Commission. I'm Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development. I'm going to be presenting from behind some of you. I apologize for that format. So, and this is a study session on our zoning code update. As we've had one previously, approximately a year ago, one study session that is, and we talked about why we're doing this. Just to recover some of that, our zoning code was adopted in 1969, so it's now 50 years old. It's never been comprehensively updated, although it's been amended about 100 times, so there's been little bits and pieces changed here and there. It's really a good opportunity to modernize the document. We've hired a consultant who has a lot of expertise in zoning codes, and that's really where they provide input into this process. They're aware of best practices out there. They're really, a fresh set of eyes that can go through the whole document and really bring it up to today's standards. In 2010, the city updated its general plan comprehensively, and there was an intent at that time to update the zoning code, but that wasn't able to move forward. And so really we need to do a lot of work to create districts that align with our general plan and really help the zoning code be a tool that implements our general plan. We have a number of known problems. We call a fix-it list. It has over 100 items on it that over the years, we've made notes of like, this is a problem, we need to fix it. So we're going to address those. Providing consistency kind of gets its own bullet here. It could fit under fix known problems or a modernizing document, but it's really important. Where zoning codes can really break down is where they use different terms for the same thing and things like that that can cause a lot of confusion. And then very importantly is to incorporate stakeholder input into the process. This is where we hear from the decision makers, Planning Commission, City Council, as well as the community members, stakeholders, on what they see as the need to change in their code and how it can better address and meet today's needs in the community. I'm going backwards. I must be whole. There we go. So just a little bit of I took this slide earlier than it's in your packet, but I just want to emphasize that we have been doing a lot of community outreach. We've actually extended the schedule of the update to have more. We started off with stakeholder meetings, but then we've had a number of community meetings with the general public or with neighborhoods, particularly the Old Quad, where we've had a lot of engagement because we know there are a lot of issues there. We did conduct an online survey with over 500 responses as well. And that input is informing what we're proposing today and going forward. So today, we're going to cover 4 topics, primarily. Some new zoning districts are being added to the code. Some relatively, I would say, minor refinements to design standards in the single-family districts. Some efforts we have to streamline procedures, avoid unnecessary process that's not really benefiting anyone. And then some things we're calling code changes to encourage placemaking. And then as alluded to by our city manager, we have 2 more study sessions specifically on this topic. So be ready. On September 4th, we're going to talk about safe parking and assisted living. And then on October 8th is we're going to really dive into the whole issue of occupancy of single-family homes in single-family residential districts, how many people can live in a house and what configuration, short-term rental use, and so forth. So that should be a big meeting ahead of us. But we're not going to talk about those things tonight, so we can focus on these other topics in the amount of time that we have. So to align, this is primarily to align with our general plan and some of the specific plans that we've adopted. We're proposing to add into the zoning code some high-density residential zoning districts. The code, as it was updated in 1969, the maximum density was 35 units per acre. So everything denser than that, which includes most apartment buildings been built in the last 20 years or more, have had to go through a plan development zoning process. With the Lawrence Station area specific plan, we added designation that went up to 100 units per acre. We've gone even higher with the Tasman East specific plan. So those zoning districts will get incorporated cohesively into the zoning code document. We're going to add some code districts that will enable mixed-use development along our identified commercial corridors, including El Camino Real, Homestead, and Saratoga roads. The general plan update kind of created more definition around office and industrial uses and how they're distinct from each other. That was never translated into the zoning code. So we're creating new zoning districts that relate to what's in the general plan. We're really trying to expand the public quasi-public zoning to address more uses, including the hospitals, assisted living facilities, other things that come along, and it's ambiguous today as to whether or not they're supported. And then I'll note on the El Camino Real specific plan, that process and this process are a little bit in a race to see who will finish first, but we expect that at this point the zoning code will be done first, and then we'll come back in and whatever comes out of the El Camino Real specific plan in terms of a zoning district will get inserted into the general zoning code. So going into the next topic, I'm going to talk about some proposed modifications to the single-family regulations. And really, the consultant said at the beginning of this process, then their experience, generally you don't want to change much in the single-family zoning, and we agree. That's, most people who live in the city have certain expectations historically around what they can and can't do. And, it's a lot of properties and something a place to tread lightly. But there were some areas as we've gone through the single-family house permit process and other things where it became clear that there were some improvements we could make through the zoning code. So we're going to look at how we codify some second-story side setbacks, adding exceptions for covered porches, dealing with existing side setbacks that don't meet the current standards and giving a little more leeway there. Accessory dwelling units, there's an interest in allowing two-story accessory dwelling units. And then I'll talk a little bit about a parking restriction that is specifically impacting single-family house addictions. So today we rely primarily on the design guidelines to regulate second floor setbacks. There's a limitation that second floor should be no more than 66% of the first floor area. These are guidelines. So it's something staff uses to evaluate a proposal, but it's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. The city has leeway to make modifications as it deems appropriate. And also in the guidelines, there's a 5-foot setback for second floors from the wall of the first floor, and the 3 to 5 foot side and rear setback for the second floor from the first floor in our guidelines. What we're proposing would add in the code a definition related to the setbacks of what is a one-story element of 14 feet. This is an area where we've realized there's ambiguity, and having this clear height standard would be very helpful. And then for the side yard setbacks for the second floor, we're proposing a standard in the code that the side setback should be half the height of the proposed second-story element. And then for the front and rear setbacks, I'm really not proposing to add anything into the code, so we would continue to use the design guidelines as they are. So this, just some illustrations of what this looks like. Here is a residence with a 5-foot side setback, a 14-foot tall first floor element that meets that setback. And then here is the second story. The height is 24 feet, so at that point there's a 12-foot setback, half the height, for that second story element to meet this proposed code. And just again, this comes out of our experience with the single-family design review process and what we think would align with community expectations. Under the code as it is today, front porches are limited in height to 3 feet. It was hard for me to find a picture of a porch that was 3 feet or less in height. Once you add a railing, that's difficult to do. Sort of in the general theme of allowing more traditional house forms, the covered porch is often seen as a desirable element. So this would allow a porch to encroach up to 6 feet that is covered. So you see some illustrations of what that could look like. So you have that more traditional porch form being allowed under the code where it isn't today. And then another instance, we have a number of houses that historically were built with less setbacks than what the code requires today. You often find a house with less than 5-foot side yard. So the idea is that if someone has such a house and they want to do an addition, they would be allowed a reduced side setback for the addition that matches the existing up, as long as they maintain at least a minimum of a 3-foot side yard setback. And there are many properties in the Old Quad area in particular that have narrow lots and do not meet these existing side yard setbacks. This would facilitate a more sort of natural remodel addition process to go forward. And then on accessory dwelling units, our code has been updated a couple times in the last few years to allow accessory dwelling units in various ways. And the proposal here is really about changing the maximum height. There's existing standards in the code for how large an accessory dwelling unit can be. We're not proposing any change to that. Where we're proposing a change, and there's 2 types of accessory dwelling units. There are those that are attached to the primary residence, and under the code today, those can go up to 25 feet in height. If it's detached in the backyard, typically, the maximum height today is 14 feet, but we've seen that there's a desire to allow taller detached accessory dwelling units. So the proposal is that they could go up to the height of the primary structure. Currently, the code limits detached accessory structures to 1 story. So the proposals allow 2 stories, and then there are some setbacks that would apply to that 2-story accessory dwelling unit to mitigate potential privacy impacts and other things that could happen from having a taller accessory structure. But and again, this is something particularly in the Old Quad we've seen desire and acceptance from the community to implement this kind of building. Also related to accessory dwelling units, in our code today, it says that basically all the materials must match the primary residence on the site, and the proposal here is not to be so restrictive, allow for something that's different but compatible to go forward and not have that in the code. And then the last item on the single-family residences, there's basically a provision in our code today that requires 2-car garages for residences, but a lot of our older residences don't have a 2-car garage. And there's an expectation in the code that if you do an addition to this existing residence, you would need to then bring it up to this code standard by adding a 2-car garage. On particularly smaller lots, this can be really prohibitive. There's been a policy in the city's general plan that allowed small additions of up to 500 square feet to go forward without expanding the garage to the 2-car garage. But the proposal here is, again, just based on experience with the community and practices to allow expansions of these houses without requiring the addition of the second parking space, at least in the code. Talk a little bit about simplified procedures. There's maybe two main things that we're doing here. One is really looking at the architectural review, single-family house permit process. And we have something kind of separate from the zoning code update that's coming forward to the City Council. Here it was heard by Planning Commission August 14th, and will be coming to the council at the upcoming meeting. And we're really looking at, currently there's a process that allows for an appeal of the architectural committee to the planning commission and an appeal of the planning commission to the council. Almost always both appeals get utilized, and can we streamline that process? We'll talk more about that later when the actual item comes to the council. And then we're looking at creating what we call a minor use permit process that would be administrative. For example, this time of year, we see pumpkin patches and Christmas tree lots, and they, as they stand in the code today, must go to city council for approval. Something like that's really very routine. So we're looking at a streamlined process for those kinds of things, and then also some other things that fall under the kind of special use permit process that can be dealt with, we think, administratively. And then there's been some conversation recently about live entertainment permits, special permits for events, things that are very important to the community in terms of making the city more lively. There's been there's traditionally perhaps there was a desire to have those all go up to a special use permit, high level hearing to wade through, but we find over time that there's sort of the same conditions are applied each time, and we can really know what those are and just codify all that and have a streamlined permit process that will reduce costs for these types of events for the the nonprofits or whoever might want to hold them, and really hopefully facilitate more cultural activity in the city. And so with that, open to city council questions and discussion.
Vice Mayor?
I have some questions relative to historic properties mostly. Will there be in the zoning code reference to historic properties being able to use the Secretary of Interior standards rather than zoning regulations? By law, they can. And they're different. They can be very different.
Okay. All right. So I think, I'm going to have to take input on a lot of things, and we'll come back. So I'm not prepared to answer, all the questions
Right,
today.
right.
But,
I wasn't asking for
yeah.
an answer, but just if this is going to be part of the process, because, for instance, on a historic property, the Secretary of Interior standards allows you to have railings that are less, that are not as tall as what the modern zoning code would be, because they match the existing, things like that.
Okay.
So that would be very important, I think, to residents in the Old Quad and other historic areas, Agnews and so forth. Along those same lines, on the additions, especially when we're talking about garages or accessory units on an historic property, so many of these garages were built on zero lot lines, and if you even push them out 3 feet for a setback, you won't get the turning radius needed to turn, to back your car out. And it does, like we did it in our garage, we needed extra firewall protection, and there other things came into play that you'd have to do to do that. But without requiring a variance for these things, which is a expensive process, can that kind of get built in?
Yeah, and just to clarify, what I was coming on was additions to the house. So if you have a detached structure, we are looking at potentially reduced setbacks. So this is, in the case you're raising, right, it's a detached garage that, could we look at having like a
Yeah.
0
Or it could end up
foot
being
setback?
attached if you're talking about additions. But I mean, just
Okay.
those kinds of things to consider, especially those
Okay.
long, narrow lots. It's, and then on the height, I wasn't sure on the slide with the height on accessory dwelling units, if it's detached equal to the primary structure height or 2 stories. So again, in Old Quad, some of these Victorians can be 30 feet tall. You wouldn't want an accessory unit that's 30 feet tall, but 2 stories wouldn't really necessarily amount to. So are you going to put a maximum on it? I mean, I appreciate that you're going to allow 2 stories anywhere on accessory unit, but should there be a maximum? Because if I read that literally,
Right.
my house is 34 feet tall.
So it could be like 25 feet would be the maximum
Yes,
for
a
2-story,
maximum,
yeah.
yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? Isn't there a square footage limit on accessory dwelling units?
Yes, it's up to 1,200 square feet.
So it's 1,200 square feet, so you're limited when you go 2 stories. It's going to be very small. Very small.
Well, those 1,200 square feet, the footprint or the FAR?
The 1,200 square feet is the square footage of the accessory dwelling unit.
But again,
So
is that the
sometimes it's combined with a
footprint?
garage or other things.
Is that the footprint or the FAR?
That's the FAR. Yeah, it's not just
Okay.
the first floor, it's the total,
Doesn't say that, right?
right? It's the total square footage.
So you could have 800 feet on story 1 and 400 on
Correct.
story 2.
Yeah, and half the size on the
Yeah.
second story.
Or perhaps the opposite, because there's a garage and,
Opposite, yeah.
Oh, and then you go, yeah, cantilever out or something. All right. Okay, those are my primary questions. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other council members? Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Andrew, thank you for the presentation. So when the study session, I see there's 2 study sessions noted. When is the deadline to hopefully get the zoning code ready to be final?
So we're tracking towards early 2020, bringing it to council. So we have these 2 study sessions, October, and then we really need to finalize the document, go to planning commission, come to council. So hopefully, probably February of 2020, is that our current target? Yeah.
And then I noticed, I think one of our consent item tonight on the agenda is a,
Contract extension. Right, and that was really as a result of us deciding we need to do more outreach this spring. We had some, conversations with the community around, particularly the short-term rentals, and realized we should have some additional meetings, and we had to kind of extend the schedule. And so we need to, that's the reason behind that request.
it's not going to impact the deadline or the February 2020?
Well,
that you're
that's the
looking-
new, that's our new,
That is, oh, okay.
our
as a
new
result.
date, yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other council members? Councilmember Chahal?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. On the aspect of setback for the second story, like 50% of the height, like in your page 5, basically, if you look at that, right. So what happens when a single-family house is next to a high-density housing? Do they have to follow the same procedure, or how we are trying to do that?
Yeah. I think that's that's another refinement we can add in. I think the proposal was just, that would be the existing requirement regardless. But if, the input is that if it's adjacent to something multifamily, maybe a reduced setback is okay, we can look at that.
Okay, so, but we will put that forward, like the zoning aspect of the high-density housing also?
So, yeah, we can, within the single-family zoning district, when we talk about setbacks, we can add, sort of an asterisk that says, if adjacent to, multifamily or something like that, then this other standard applies.
I'm talking other way around, like.
Or the opposite?
A high-density housing when comes to close to a single-family housing. What is the setback ruling for them when their
Yeah.
height is, let's say, 40, 60,
Right.
40 feet? So what's
Yeah.
their setback would be?
Yeah, we are incorporating standards like that into our higher density zoning districts. So we can I'll provide more information on that to you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question before we go to the Planning Commission. One is regarding the simplified procedures for placemaking. So when you talk about streamlining permits for live entertainment, special permits and things like that, are you talking about also outside live entertainment? And what protections do you have for the neighborhoods when they're close to neighborhoods in terms of, I'm in favor of definitely encouraging those, but what kind of neighborhood protections do you have built in, or can we have neighborhood protections built into the simplified procedure?
So, yeah, so 2 things. I think in terms of the live entertainment, that was really focused on interior. we've had a number of restaurants and hotels and things that might have live music, and we wanted to facilitate that.
I think I then was thrown
But,
by the word placemaking because
well,
it's not inside placemaking,
Yeah,
it's
well, the
outside.
special
So,
permits, yeah, so I'm sorry,
Yeah.
let me continue. So the special permits, though, applies to those kinds of neighborhood events. And we do apply a series of conditions. So the current process goes to city council. The council generally approves these special permits that have those kinds of conditions in them that speak to, noise, hours, and so forth. So all that would continue. It would just get applied through an administrative process rather than through a city council process. So we would maintain the same protections that seem to be working, because as we've brought these forward to city council, they routinely get approved on the consent calendar. And so if they're working, we'll continue to do them, but just at an administrative level.
All right, I understand. All right, Planning Commission, I'll turn it over to you for your questions.
Question. So one thing I'll voice as a concern, though. So the setback that Councilmember Chahal was referring to, where you have to have the second story set inward. I've heard from neighbors and that it costs more, one, when you have to change the roof. But two, also, you're almost stipulating the roof form through the setback. You're not allowing for other types of roof types, especially in historic districts. You can have Dutch, you can have a, taller Victorian. So that setback limitation will limit our ability, and especially contemporary designs, to look at new roof forms, where you're looking at mandating almost the inverse. That's one concern. Two, you had mentioned that the grandfathered setback or setbacks that do not currently meet the code requirements will allow for a minimal addition. Is there a square footage limit on the actual addition, or what is your ability to restrict? Because I've seen instances where you can practically tear the entire house down but keep the setback wall and allowed to build the whole house again. So you want to quantify either the square footage or how much you are allowed to add within that grandfathered setback.
Okay. We'll look at that.
Commissioner Salim?
So my question is around the 25-foot height limit. Given the right roof style, open truss, flat roof, you can actually squeeze 2.5 stories in. Are we going to set a story height limit that is kind of without consideration of actual height, so that we don't allow people to build these loft-style third floors?
Yeah. So for the accessory dwelling units, the
Well, accessory dwelling and main dwelling.
main residences, I mean, the intent is still 2 stories. That's the limit, not 2.5. So it could be a 25-foot tall 2 stories, a little bit on the hall, but remember that also includes the roof form. So a lot of sort of conventional houses 2-story houses fall in that limit.
Commissioner Jane?
In the packet document, there was a discussion about form-based codes, but then there was no description about where those would apply and when those would apply. So maybe you could explain how that happens. And then there was an issue that came up at a planning commission meeting where live music permits were like $10,000. So with this streamlined process, do you have any estimate how much that would be reduced by if it goes through an administrative approval? And I was wondering if there would be a situation where a restaurant would just get a by right permit, so it wouldn't have to go through an approval process, but then it would be subject to noise constraints and nuisance constraints for those. And then the other question I had was, I know that for Tasman East, we're going to go higher than 100 design units per acre. What's the highest that we're going to go in all of the specific area plans? And we're interested in incentivizing type 1 construction. So do any of these have minimum design unit per acre that would sort of push developers into these other construction types?
Okay. All right, a number of questions. So on form-based code, we have what I would call form elements increasingly proposed in some of our multifamily districts in particular, where we are looking at, sort of different setbacks for multifamily in different circumstances, whether they be adjacent to a single family or with a street in between. Some of those different things you'll see in the El Camino Real specific plan, and then potentially in the downtown, when we get there, that's something that's being looked at as well. So, we're not proposing to launch into a full creation of a form-based code. That's a big, whole nother undertaking. But we are looking at ways to incorporate elements of form-based code into particularly the multifamily zone and mixed-use zoning districts. The question about live entertainment permits through an administrative process, typically that's more in the hundreds of dollar range. So considerably cheaper than a conditional use permit, and also it can be much faster, so that can be helpful as well. And then the city has already created in the Tasmania specific plan area a zoning district that goes up to 350 units per acre. So I don't think we are contemplating anything higher than that at all, but that's already on the books in that case. And we do have minimums in that particular case, but the minimum is not so high as to force anyone to build type 1.
Okay. And then another question I had was, as we approve some of these projects, there are constraints on the hours that the construction company can work. And it seems like, to me, that we should remove the hours of construction for interior work. So if a developer has already built the whole structure and is just painting inside, they should be able to, because they want to open the building and take revenue as soon as possible, they should be able to work 24/7 like Silicon Valley.
Okay. Commissioner Biagini.
So I have a question going back to the zoning code update on the new zoning districts. Where would a new downtown fall? In the public, quasi-public, or is that in need of its own zoning district?
It would be its own district that would come out of that downtown precise planning process that's we're in the beginning of.
Well, I kind of wondered, because I noticed El Camino Real, they're in the middle of their specific plan, but I didn't see the downtown, so that would be a add-on after?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And the El Camino Real is further along.
Further along,
And at
right,
one
yeah.
point, the schedules were such that we thought it might be done first, but it's
Doesn't
kind
look
of,
like
the
it.
two are racing a little bit.
Well,
Yeah.
you can always update the one to follow the other, which I
Right.
would think would mean zoning code would probably be better to come first.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kelly.
Okay. Going back to page 5 regarding the second-story setbacks. Before, we've looked at the slope of the roof and screening. If we have a 12-foot setback, I would assume we're adding considerable amount on the second floor because it won't be in line with the first floor. And I think the intent was to reduce the massing, but I think the way it's coming across, it seems like the side setbacks, which we were allowing much tighter before, is not going to allow people to build the home that they want. The other thing I was wondering, this example, it's kind of off, but a lot of homes, the center peak is kind of in the middle. basing a setback based on the center peak of the structure, which typically is in the center of the garage, might be a better way. And I don't know if we want to go half the height, because it would reduce the amount of potential square footage that a person could put, especially on a smaller lot. I think slope with roof or screening might be a better way, or something that we would give as an alternate if they can't meet the 12-foot setback.
Any other planning commissioners like to chime in?
Yes.
Commissioner Janey?
I was wondering if there are any incentives we can put into the codes to incentivize rooftop gardens or lead building construction types, you know, minimum lead gold or something in the city like some of our neighboring cities have. And then if there are any incentives we can apply to stack density bonuses, because right now you can get the bonus for being near transit or being lead or have affordable housing. But once you take one of those, you don't have any incentive to add the others. So there's no stacking involved.
So those are general plan policies, the density bonuses. So to address that, we would have to look at amending the general plan. So that would really be a separate work item that, we could look at, but it's not what we're doing in the scope of what we're doing.
Aren't all the specific area plans essentially general plan amendments for those areas?
The specific plans include general plan amendments
Yes.
for those areas.
So we could put them
within
there.
the context of a specific plan, we could look at different densities. So when El Camino Real specific plan comes to the Planning Commission, that's something you can weigh in on.
Okay. And then any incentives for eliminating gas in our construction, natural gas in our construction?
Okay, well, again, I think that's probably something that falls outside the zoning code.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Chiracuru?
This is just a pointer. I'm wanting to check. So the state has come out with SB2, which is planning grants for efforts such as this. And the application's due by November 30th, 2019. But it is a great incentive that enables housing, streamlining processes related to housing, streamlining incentives and inventory. So I suggest just taking a look at it for us.
Yeah, and we are looking at how do you, SB2 is nice because we're guaranteed to receive the grant, and we know how much we'll receive. So we're looking at what we'll submit for that, particularly related to the housing element, perhaps, is where we're going to focus. I mean, this effort here is funded, so we're looking at the next thing. Yeah.
Commissioner Biagini?
Going back to the goals for the update, there was under modernizing the document, format and style and word choices. Can you expand a little on what you meant by word choices and what you're looking at?
Well, there's a lot in that to unpack, but when we talk about just defining what are different commercial uses, what are different industrial uses. We had recently, assisted living, independent living, and you find that the industry likes to use terms for marketing reasons. We don't always think the same way because we're thinking more about trying how to distinguish these uses. So it's kind of a comprehensive review of that. What is an industrial office? What is a commercial office? How do we need to address all these things in the code? So if there are particular uses that you feel are not well addressed, then let us know and we'll make sure we capture that.
Well, I was kind of wondering too if there was any thought about, instead of codifying the different zones, SR, Q, 2, 3, that kind of thing, and instead calling it single-family residence or SFR, if that was part of the thought process.
Yeah. Well, they actually do have names. but
No, but
everyone
you
tends
don't
to
usually
use
hear 'em
the,
referred that way. There's all
right.
these numbers and letters attached.
So, I think we'll keep both at this point, just because sometimes it's useful to be able to use an abbreviated designation, but I understand the point. And certainly, we want to make sure that the purpose of the district is clear. This is a single-family small lot district, or this is a single-family large lot district, and so forth.
Commissioner Chiracuru?
I'm going to ask that maybe those be the last comments. I do want to go to the public because we only have just a couple of minutes before we have to stop.
This is the last comment. I did want to say, following that comment, to be very cautious in your definitions and in your glossary. We are seeing a changing, changing definition of commercial. What is commercial anymore? What is office, and what is retail, and what is service-oriented retail? What is medical office building? So just be very cautious in not putting us in specific buckets, that it doesn't allow flexibility.
And I had one question myself. For the accessory dwelling units, for guest houses or accessory dwelling units that are still there from, let's say, they were built in the 50s, are they going to be grandfather claused in as they can expand their guest house without having to attach it, or they can still keep it detached?
So if someone has an existing legal accessory dwelling unit, could they expand it up? Presumably, they could up to 1,200 square feet if it was in some way non-conforming in terms of setback or height. I think that, the expansion as drafted at least would need to conform to these new standards. But there is some, if it's detached, there's more allowances for reduced setback in the code already.
Okay.
Yeah, but if there's a particular case, it might be useful to look at that too.
Okay. And I really thank you for fixing in the zoning code about the removing the two-car requirement for houses that especially have the one-car garage in old neighborhoods. That's really appreciated because we met a lot of pushback with that on the Planning Commission. So it's greatly appreciated. And I really greatly appreciate that you guys did this zoning code update. And I believe I'm with Commissioner Jane and a lot of others on this, on getting a place where we can actually hear live music without $10,000 to have that permitted.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that would like to make any statements, comments, or have any questions. Anyone in the public? Would you like to say something? Anyone? Okay. Seeing none, Vice Mayor, and then we really have to end this now.
Just quick,
Thank you.
because I wanted, so the zoning code update on page 4, we have the single-family second floor guidelines. If that's in the code, those setbacks probably work well for most ranch homes, although the rear setback often is not needed because of the length of people's backyards. But they wouldn't work in like Mackey's or Victorians or Craftsman's or Eichler's, or the other one I'm trying to think of, which is the one that has the farm, the gambrel roofs, McClarney Farms or something. So we've struggled with those in architectural review for many years, how to make those work. And they do work, and they can work, and it is about massing, as one of the planning commissioners pointed out. So how do we make that so flexible enough so that these aren't, just such tight restrictions that they can't be changed or amended, or without going through a variance procedure?
Okay. Yeah, we've got a couple comments on that one, so we'll definitely follow up.
All right, thank you, and I'm sorry to cut this short, but we have a council meeting and some timed items, so thank you very much. This is going to be the first of many meetings that we're going to talk about the zoning code, and we'll try to have a little extra time next time so we can get everyone's comments in. So thank you all for participating with us. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Santa Clara City Council meeting. I want to welcome back my fellow council members and staff. We have been on break, City Council meeting break for the last month, so welcome back, everyone. We're all happy to be here. Yes, look at all these smiling faces. All right, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our statement of values? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Assistant City Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Mahan. Here. Councilmember Hardy.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Davis. Here. Councilmember Watanabe. Here. Councilmember Chahal.
Here.
And Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
And may I read the AB 23 announcement?
Yes, please.
Members of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, Sports and Open Space Authority, and Housing Authority are entitled to receive $30 for each attended meeting. Statement of behavioral standards. The City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note, as a presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed, and the use of gavel indicates all conversations must conclude and everyone in attendance should come to order and attention. Welcome and thank you for your participation.
Thank you for that, Assistant City Clerk. Before we move on with the meeting, as I mentioned earlier, we have been on council break for the last month, and there are several things that have happened around us and in the United States that were of a very unfortunate situation. So I'm going to ask that the council and the audience join me in a moment of silence. First of all, to talk about the recent mass shootings that we've had, and one that was so close to home in Gilroy, California. So I would like to offer our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of the individuals who tragically lost their lives from the mass shooting events in the recent weeks. The Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting, July 28th, 2019. The El Paso, Texas Walmart shooting, August 3rd, 2019. And the Dayton, Ohio Entertainment District shooting, August 4th, 2019. So let us please have a moment of silence in memory of the individuals that lost their lives. Thank you very much, council and audience, for that. Next, any reports of actions taken in closed session? City Attorney?
No reportable actions were taken in closed session.
Okay. Any continuances or exceptions to the agenda, staff, council? Does anyone have any item to continue? Seeing none, anyone from the audience? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward to our special orders of business. So the first special order of business we have this evening, we have a very special presentation on the Action Children's Business Fair. And the Action Children's Business Fair supports kid entrepreneurs all over the world with one-day fairs in local communities. Action Children's Business Fair events aim to spark children's entrepreneurial spirit by giving children from ages 5 to 12 the opportunity to showcase their very own businesses. Our local resident, Kiran Ganesh, and his son, Mikhail, which I'd like you to come forward, please, so everyone knows who we're talking about. Thank you very much. Worked with Action Children's Business Fair and Harker School to organize the first Action Children's Business Fair event in Santa Clara last October. During the event, the participants, you can come to the podium here. During the event, the participants had the opportunity to be an entrepreneur for a day and sell creative products that they either designed or built by themselves. So at this time, I'd like to turn our attention to Mikhail Kiran and his father, Kiran Ganesh, up to the podium. Thank you for your agreeing to come tonight to the City Council to tell us a little bit about what you presented at the business fair, and welcome.
Good evening, respected Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. My name is Mikhail Kiran. I'm a 6th grade student and resident of Santa Clara. I'm here to talk to you about the Children's Business Fair. Here's the story of how it all got started. Last year, my 5th grade friends and I started a kids' soap business for a previous business fair in Burlingame. And it was really fun and really exciting for us. Our soap business won first prize at that fair. But Burlingame is so far away from here, so many of my friends that wanted to come couldn't make it. So on the drive back home, I was thinking of a way that we could bring the business fair closer to home. And then I thought of it. Why not organize our own business fair? One of the main problems is that we had no prior experience in organizing such a big event. So it took around 4 months in planning, getting city permits, fundraising, marketing, and finally running our event. My parents guided me about what to do, but made me do the work. Here are a few examples of my work. For example, the flyers I designed and the fundraising video I designed. And I also went door to door in my neighborhood asking people to apply to our fair. We would like to say a big thank you to Ms. Kathy Watanabe for her invaluable help with introduction to city officials, help with getting park permits, advice on how to raise funds, promoting the event, etc. Thank you. So what exactly is a children's business fair? It's an event where kids get to be an entrepreneur for a day, make their own product, market it, and sell it. Last year, the event was held on Sunday, October 14th at Live Oak Park in Santa Clara. Our booths were sold out. We had 42 kid businesses, and we even had a wait list of 60 more applications. We had partial sponsorship from local businesses and hundreds of visitors from the community. Those visitors got to experience many interesting products that were made by kids. For example, cardboard fort kits, indoor ice skating shoes, jewelry, paper mache pets, etc. Here are a few pictures from last year's fair. We were thrilled to see great reviews from the fair participants that loved their experience at our fair. Here are a couple of pictures of my school newspaper and the Santa Clara Weekly's coverage of the event. This year, we are proud to bring back the 2nd annual Santa Clara Children's Business Fair. It will be held on October 12th at the same location, Live Oak Park in Santa Clara. As of now, we have 66 applied to our fair and 42 accepted. Last year, our mission was to just bring the business fair closer to home. But this year, our mission is to discover, promote, and inspire young entrepreneurs. When we thought of bringing back the fair this year, we had a small list of things that we would like to add to our fair. We wanted to get a city grant so that we could spend more time on organizing the event. And we have applied and we received it. Thank you for the grant. We wanted more booths for our business fair so that more kids could have an experience. and we've already done that. We wanted food trucks, which was one of the major things that people had in the feedback forms from last year, and we got the city permit for that already. We wanted to have a coaching session for the participants on how to market their products and sell them, and we've already planned that. The last thing on the list is the inclusion of food and beverage categories. Current city regulations do not permit us to have this as a choice, and we need the city's help on this for next year. Thank you, City of Santa Clara, for your amazing support in our business fair. We would be honored if you could come to our fair and support us. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you.
I can only say that you are so impressive, and we are always looking for people here at the city to help promote all of our events and for event planning. So what are you doing next year? City manager, sign him up. This is really incredible. I'm going to ask Councilmember Watanabe if she'd like to make some comments, since she arranged for you to be here today. And we're so happy.
Of course. Thank you, Mikhail, for coming, and your dad and your mom for being so supportive of you. Thank you for bringing this program, to the city. I mean, it's such a wonderful opportunity. You learned something and you wanted to share it, and I think that is such a wonderful quality, to see in you. That you wanted other students to experience what you experienced. And it's not just like your age. I mean, the students that participated were from elementary all the way up to high school, and it gave them the opportunity to present in their own way, but also to be able to promote their product. You gave them the opportunity to talk to venture capitalists and give them the opportunity to explain, their product. And as a result, there were winners. There were three categories, I think, between the elementary school level and the high school level. And so, I mean, it was competitive, which is very good in business. And because that's how we learn to grow. And you have just changed this program so much and expanded it so much in 1 year. I can't imagine what it's going to be like next year. So thank you so much, for this, for bringing this to Santa Clara and, continuing to grow. And we look forward to this year. I'll definitely be out there. I'm just down the street from where it's going to be, so I'll definitely be there. But thank you for, looking for opportunities to continue to grow and inviting the council to be a part of it as well. So congratulations, Mikhail, and congratulations to your parents as well. I know they're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Watanabe. Before we present you with a special recognition, I'm wondering if your father would like to say something about your son. Make it nice, because it's all it's on tape and on television.
Yes,
Okay.
so when we were coming back from the other fair in Burlingame, he was asking, how can we do something bigger next year? I was thinking it'll be like a little bit more complicated business or something like that. This is not what I thought was going to come, but it's been a most amazing experience. So I think we learned a lot, and really appreciate the city's help every step of the way. I think we are geared up to do something bigger, better this year. So really looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So in honor and recognition of all your hard work of bringing the Action Children's Business Fair to Santa Clara, the City Council would like to present you with a special mayoral recognition presentation here. So if you'd like to meet us right up front, if I could ask the council if we could go down and take a photo with this exceptional young man. And if you'd like to bring your family up as well, we'd be happy. Yeah. Okay, our next special order of business is recognition of first LEGO League team Cats Love Mars. Is anyone here from Cats Love Mars? Oh. Teams Cats Love Mars is an all-girls robotic team made up of students from Central Park Elementary School and Milliken Basics Elementary School. They competed in the first LEGO League Global Innovation Championship held on June 30th through July 2nd, 2019 at the California Theater in San Jose, California. This prestigious competition showcases the real-world innovative solutions that the first LEGO League teams create as a result of their project. Their invention, Combustion Artificial Intelligence Thermal Imaging Safety System, you got it, CATS, CATS, can detect fires, pre-ignition smoldering, hotspots, cool flames, and leaks on the International Space System, ISS, using radiation sensor thermal cameras and machine learning. Wow. Wow. With their innovative invention team, Cats Love Mars was selected as one of the 20 semifinalists in the world for the first LEGO League Global Innovation Award. So at this time, I'd like to ask the team, Cats Love Mars, and their coaches up to the podium for a presentation. If your coaches would like to come up, if not, that's okay too. Welcome. Welcome. You can pull it down too when you want to speak. Very good.
We are Team Cats Love Mars. We are a robotics team made up of 5th and 6th graders.
Does that work? Is that working for you?
Oh, thanks.
All right, there you go.
We compete in First LEGO League. Our team was invited to the First LEGO League Global Innovation Awards out of 40,000 other teams from all around the world. Our team is the first team ever from Santa Clara to go to the Global Innovation Awards. The Global Innovation Awards is a competition of 20 teams who are given the challenge to find and solve a real-world problem that astronauts face. When the Paradise Fire broke out, everyone was inhaling the smoke. At school, we were not allowed to go outdoors for recess because of the bad air quality. In my class, our teacher, Miss Jennifer Zeitler, was talking to us about how we should empathize with the fire victims. Our class had a brainstorming session to think of solutions to help them. Later, our team started discussing ways we could prevent fires like these, but in space. We learned that in space, fire detection is delayed and unreliable. We also learned that oxygen leaks are detected when oxygen levels decrease. We needed a solution to improve fire and leak detection in space.
Our solution is CATS, which stands for the Combustion Artificial Intelligence Thermal Imaging Safety System. It instantly predicts fires and identifies oxygen leaks in spacecrafts faster than other current solutions. CATS uses thermal cameras that will take pictures of the inside of the spacecraft and will use machine learning to identify fires and oxygen leaks in the photos. If a danger is detected, the astronauts and mission control will be automatically alerted. Because our project is about fire safety, we wanted to learn how heat behaved in microgravity, so we ran experiments on heat transfer in space. Here, we are presenting our project at the Global Innovation Awards.
Our future. Jamie Fitzgibbon, an innovation strategist from Booz Allen Hamilton MES at GIA. She contacted the Booz Allen Hamilton International Space Station team who are interested in hearing about our project. We also met Sandra Olson from NASA's Spacecraft Fire Safety, who is interested in hearing more about our research. At the GIA, we were inducted into the first Lego League Global Innovation Ambassadorship. As ambassadors, we will be promoting STEM around the community. We are Team Capsule Mars, saving lives across the universe. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Before you go anywhere, can you tell us your names one at a time so everybody that is not only here but watching you from home so they know exactly who you are?
I'm Caitlin Dosh.
Thank you.
I'm Shrestha Kanla.
I'm Gari Todur.
I'm Kamei Dosh.
Wow. That was very, very impressive. Councilmember Hardy, you must be very impressed with this.
Well, I want to recruit them. I'm the coach at Wilcox High School for the robotics. We're in the first league. We do FTC, and I want to know if any of you plan to go to Wilcox.
Don't commit now. Just don't commit. Councilmember Watanabe, you also invited this group here tonight. Would you like to say something about them?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's back to school week, so it's a great opportunity to have kids at the city council meeting and, you know, just talk about the great things that you're doing going into your new school year. And I was so glad when your auntie, Kirti Vani, contacted me to let me know about this great program that you were participating in, and I asked her, you know, how you did and just keep me apprised. And because this was such a great accomplishment, and I mean, you were out of what did you say, 30,000 teams from around the world, and you were one of 20 that got accepted to participate, and you were one of 2 teams from the state of California, if I heard correctly. So, I mean, that is such an accomplishment, and you should be so proud of yourselves, and you've got your medals on, and you just had a great summer making great memories, and you just like the mayor said, hold out, you know, don't sell yourself to the first robotics team, the high school team, and you have a lot to give back. I mean, I think just the project that you chose, I mean, I'm hoping that, you know, a lot of firefighters and fire departments are out there listening, and you know, maybe you've given them some things to think about that maybe they didn't think about before. So congratulations, and thank you for being here tonight. We're all very proud of you, as I'm sure your schools and your coaches are as well. So thank you.
And we already had recognition from our fire department over here, right, Jeremy? Yeah. Yeah. Can I be your agent? Okay, I can see it here. But seriously, in recognition for inventing cats and for being selected as one of the 2019 first LEGO League Global Innovation Award semifinalists, we would like to present you with a certificate of special mayoral recognition. So if you would please join us up here, I'd invite the council to come down. And if you'd like your advisors and your teachers, you can also please join us up here for the presentation. Where are you? I love your outfit. You have the best outfit. Thank you so much, and thank you all, the advisors and supporters and family members and teachers. That's an amazing accomplishment for these young ladies, and we're very, very proud of them. So thank you. Thank you for coming. All right. Our next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. All items are approved with one motion unless any item is pulled for discussion. Does the council have any items they'd like pulled for discussion on consent? Okay, seeing none. Staff, do you have anything? Any member of the public, is there anyone that would like to pull a consent calendar item? Seeing none, is there a
Motion to approve consent calendar.
consent? Motion second. Any other discussion? Okay, please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. That pretty much was 3/4 of our agenda, so just about done. All right, so moving on, we have public presentations. Is there any, do we have any cards for public presentations, City Clerk? Oh, I pulled myself out of this by mistake. No cards. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? Please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move on then to consent items pulled for discussion. We have none. So our first item for public hearing general business is action on amendment number 3 to the agreement for professional services with Perkins and Will for amendments to the Tasman East specific plan. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Rena Brio, Planning Manager in Community Development. The item for consideration for Council today is an amendment to an existing agreement with Perkins and Will for some professional services to help the city evaluate a potential change to the Tasman East specific plan. The Tasman East specific plan change would involve allowing an existing pump station that had been previously contemplated to be moved to be retained at its existing location, as well as allow for some changes to a public right-of-way that were also contemplated in a certain configuration with the Tasman East specific plan. For some background and reminders on the Tasman East specific plan, the City Council adopted the plan in November of last year, and that plan allowed for a capacity of 4,500 total residential units and some supportive commercial that would support the new neighborhood that's being created there. And this entire site is approximately 40 acres in size. We've seen a lot of strong development interest. 3,800 units have been applied for or have been recently approved, and hopefully we'll see some projects break ground in the relatively near future. So what we're here to talk about tonight is the Main Street component of the Tasman East plan. This is Calle del Sol. So Calle del Sol was really contemplated to be an area where there would be retail and pedestrian activity. A component of the plan was really also to break up the large land mass and to extend Calle del Sol. So just to orient you to the map a little bit, Calle del Sol is the entrance to Tasman East from Tasman Drive, and the roadway currently exists only between Tasman Drive and Calle del Luna. So as part of the plan, there was the intention to extend Calle del Sol as a full street between Calle del Luna and Calle del Mundo. And this was intended for a few reasons. One, to allow for a more comfortable pedestrian environment to break down, some of the large blocks that would be without the creation of the street extension, as well as to allow for additional retail opportunities throughout the plan area. So a challenge presents itself with the implementation of this concept, and really the location of the Primavera pump station, which is located really at the terminus of where the Calle de Luna extension would begin, is one of the main obstacles. So the Primavera pump station was anticipated to potentially be relocated or at least reconfigured in order to allow for the street extension. As part of analyzing really the specificities of how this would occur, it was realized that providing the pump station in its existing location in an underground configuration, so that was what staff had been hopeful for, that existing street infrastructure or undergrounding the pump station would be practical. Really looking at the operations as well as some of the standards that need to be applied to this pump station, that was deemed to not be feasible. So really the question of relocating the pump station to another area within the Tasmanian specific plan had begun then to be evaluated earlier this year. It was done through a particular study that was done by some engineers with Woodard and Curran. They identified 5 sites within the specific plan area and said 2 of them were the most preferred of those 5 sites. In discussing the relocation with developers, it was really apparent because as I had mentioned, there's been a lot of strong development interest with the specific plan. We have a number of applications that have been on file for several months, well before this study had begun, that really it was deemed not particularly desirable to locate the pump station on really an opportunity site for development. So the developer group, which we meet with routinely in order to think through and work out the implementation of the specific plan, have proposed an alternative to the relocation of the Primavera pump station. And staff's been working with them a few months, and we feel comfortable with the proposal which we'd like to bring forward to be studied further. So the proposal is to reconfigure the Calle del Sol extension to not be a full street, but instead to be a paseo. And what this would do is enable the pump station to stay in its place. It would also reduce the pump station footprint, so there would be improvements made to the pump station. An architectural treatment would be added to completely enclose the pump station, and this would be seen as an opportunity for public art as well as placemaking in its own way. Some of the activities that we could expect as proposed, this would be a multimodal paseo, so it would be open for pedestrians as well as for bicyclists. In the back, this perspective shows the pump station enclosure at the back of the image, and what is also included is a community stage and performance area that would allow for pop-up as well as planned activities for placemaking, some additional street life with trees and seating, and this is all proposed to be privately maintained and funded. The activities, the pop-up activities would also be privately funded through either a business improvement district or a similar structure. So some of the design concepts that we have at the moment and are getting refined are 2. One, a wood-style option that sort of has more of a sea ranch, I guess, feeling to it, or a Butler-style option, which is a little bit more edgy and industrial looking. And there would be some additional treatments of the concrete, whether either through wood siding or through some special concrete, and festival lighting or wood decking would be included, and some additional seating for pop-up opportunities. Some of the programming, so there would be wayfinding at the edge of the paseo. There would be gateway public art that needs to get further refined. Right now, there's a proposed mural on on one of the potential concepts for the enclosure itself, but once again, that would be further refined. Passive seating to support, once again, there would be retail still along the paseo, so there'd be seating to support that retail and some additional programmable spaces. So things you could expect to see would be yoga classes, music performances, movie nights. So related to the Perkins and Will contract amendment, this would allow the consultants to actually update the specific plan to include the paseo instead of the street and all the imagery to go with that, provide an additional environmental analysis so that a modified traffic analysis would be provided to look at the paseo versus street option, and then really also some additional sub-consultant work with strategic economics to really look at how do we support the retail there and support the placemaking and make sure that the business activity as well as the programming is something that can be sustainable and is well thought out. So the amendment adds about $45,500 to the contract with Perkins and Will, and the city would enter into a reimbursement agreement with the developers who currently have projects on file, so the city would recoup the costs of this further analysis. And I just want to be clear that tonight we're really interested in your input on this concept in general. Tonight's action is really to prove the contract amendment. However, any changes to the specific plan would be brought forward to the Planning Commission for recommendation and then to the City Council for ultimate adoption. And I'm here to answer any questions.
I have a couple of questions. One is the paseo, is that would that be physically located over existing streets?
No. Currently,
I'm not sure where
yes.
this is, and how many property owners does it hit?
Right. It affects 4 property owners. If you can, I don't know if I can do this.
And I know this will all be brought back. These are just general questions.
I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. So between the street where Calle de Sol ends is called Calle de Luna.
Where the square is there, kind of.
Yeah, where
right
the square is
behind it?
there, that is actually like smack dab in where the paseo would be. And so it
Okay.
affects the neighboring property owners to the east and west, and then property owners, if you imagined an imaginary line north of the Primavera pump station,
Yes.
those 2 property owners as well. So those 4 property owners were also going to be affected by the plan with the street configuration. So
Okay.
this, instead of it being a full-blown street, would be a paseo.
This may not be a fair question at this time, but do you know if those 4 property owners have have they submitted potential projects?
One
Or-
of them has.
Oh,
One,
okay.
this project here, I should say the northwest corner of Calle de Mundo and Calle del Sol is a development site being proposed by Ensemble. It's a residential higher density project that also includes a brewery, and they're really excited about this paseo option actually, and they like the seating and the connectivity that it provides.
I'm just asking because I know we have some property owners that have no intention at this time to sell or to be involved in this, and I was wondering if any of those were that you know of, but that's okay. And then the other question I have is the actual size of the enclosure area for the pump station. How big is that? I'm trying to figure out
So
how large this structure has to be.
The footprint is about 4,000 square feet.
Okay.
I don't have the height for you.
No, that gives me a good idea about how big this enclosure or whatever the structure needs to be. That's fairly good size. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Davis, you have questions?
Thank you. When I looked at this, I thought it was very creative, and the fact that it's going to be a high-density area anyway, and this paseo adds that extra living room space that everybody's looking for, and I'm kind of glad that the mayor asked the question with the people that are already involved in this and the people that weren't going to sell, that this is going to be, a good thing, not a bad thing. And the fact that I think we're saving how much money by not moving that pump station would be, what was the cost on that?
So we only have cost estimates, and they vary greatly based on a lot of different factors. So I do think that this will be a cost savings. However, this still will be considerably a significant amount of money just to, they'll involve rehabbing the pump station as well as enclosing it, and then all the improvements to the Paseo itself. So although it is less expensive, I'd still say that the driver behind us isn't as much the cost as much as some of the feasibility concerns.
We always look at money.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for staff recommendation to approve this.
Okay, there's motion second, but there's still more questions. Councilmember Hardy?
I was just going to make the point, I used to live on Calle de Primavera, so I know this area very, very well. When you talked about looking at whether it was a barn idea or more industrial, there is a thought for both, because the Esperanza farm used to be across the way, and there was an old barn that was very picturesque that we lost when we developed that. And, but you also have that side was more industrial, and there was really nothing to look at as far as anything interesting architecturally. But I think either one, if you tie it into what will be there, I like the idea because it's not far off the light rail system. That's going to be, there's a lot of walking there, especially before and after events at the stadium. So I think it's a smart way to save us some money and to make something a little more interesting rather than underground it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I know, I talked to one of the developers, like where the Carl's Jr. is going in, and I know from the renderings that I saw that they had a Paseo as part of where they were developing, and I think this is going to be a nice continuation of what they're planning to do. And I was glad to hear that, some additional properties have been built are purchased by developers out there. I met with Dr. Patrick recently, and he was telling me actually that about the recent purchases and how they're actually going to work with him around his business, because he's one of the businesses that's not going to relocate.
Right.
So it sounded like they had a real, they had worked out a nice win-win situation to keep everybody happy out there. But I think this is a great idea. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I see no other questions from council. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this issue? If so, please come forward. Do we have any cards on this also? Okay, thank you. Thank you. If you'd like to just have a seat, there might be some questions after. Thank you. Thank you, Rena. Good evening.
Good evening, council, mayor and council. I, of course, am always in favor of removing cars from our streets, but there's going to be 4,500 units here, and I'm just concerned about traffic impacts on the other streets and severe congestion. So I would just suggest that we go through a thorough traffic analysis.
Thank you. I think that's being done already, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's part of the specific plan process. All right, is there anyone else? All right, well, thank you. I see no further questions, so we have a motion and a second for staff recommendation. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Okay, our next item on the agenda we have is action on the city's response to the June 2019 Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury Report entitled Inquiry into Governance of the Valley Transportation Authority. City Manager.
I'm just going to start the report off, and then our Director of Public Works will go through the findings and recommendation.
Okay.
Just for context, you have before you the requirement to respond to the grand jury's report. When a grand jury issues a report, by law, we have 90 days to issue a response. This response would satisfy the requirement. I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the report, because the code also mandates how we are guided by or how we are required to respond. So when there is an instance of a finding from the grand jury, we are limited to our responses with agree in whole, partially agree, disagree in whole, or partially disagree. And so you will find in the report that format. For purposes of responding to recommendations from a grand jury report, the code also requires that we respond in one of four manners, and it's outlined on in your report, where our choices are to respond with the recommendation has been implemented, the recommendation has not been implemented or requires further analysis or will not be implemented. In that case, we do need to provide additional narrative in terms of why we are proposing that response. The report itself is due to the grand jury, to the Santa Clara Superior Court, to the presiding judge by September 16th. So we are bringing it in a timely manner so that in the event that we need to come back, we can receive more input. The reason why I'm outlining this is because this is a little unusual in that many times a grand jury report will require for a department or for the city manager to respond and propose to the city council. In this case, they are asking the city council to respond. So your response, you'll need to have agreement with respect to forwarding it to the court. And the issue is separate from staff's work with the VTA. When we thought through this, we acknowledged from a staff perspective, we enjoy a good working relationship with VTA staff to staff. However, the topic at hand is governance, and the governance between the agencies, the county cities with respect to the VTA. We are fortunate in that the city has a governance committee that Councilmember Teresa O'Neill chairs, and also serves as the chair for the VTA. And so we were thoughtful in that the best approach to respond and prepare for the council a proposed response is to bring it first to the governance committee where the discussion could be had, reflect that in the minutes so that we begin to craft a response that is reflective of the council sentiment in terms of governance. The minutes are included in your packet. You'll see that much of our response is formulated from the conversation that was had at the committee level. But we're now here prepared to walk through the findings and recommendations so that the council as a whole can begin to formulate a response. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Director Mobeck.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Craig Mobeck, Director of Public Works. So before I get into the findings and recommendations, just wanted to give a brief summary of what came out of the grand jury's report that was submitted to the city. In short, the report mentions that according to the civil grand jury, that the VTA has been plagued by declining operating performance and reoccurring budget gaps between projected revenues and expenses, despite significant population growth in the Silicon Valley. The report also references past grand jury reports that were done in 03, 04, as well as 08, 09, that in summary concluded operating performance of the VTA compared unfavorably to peer organizations. The VTA board had not effectively managed finances, resulting in substantial structural financial deficits, and that a root cause of the performance was the governance structure of the VTA board. So based on that, the report was put together. They started that in August of 2018 with their investigations, concluded them in May of 2019. They conducted various site visits, utilized a transit system, interviewed numerous individuals, reviewed governing documents, also conducted comparisons of operating and financial performance with other transit organizations, and attended a variety of meetings. So based on the discussions at the Governance and Ethics Committee, as the city manager mentioned, we put together the responses to the findings. The report asks that the page 47 of the report specifically requests the responses for finding number 1, as well as recommendations 1C, 1D, and 1E. So I will start with finding number 1. In summary, the VTA board, the finding stated that the VTA board suffers from a lack of experience, continuity, and leadership, inadequate time for directors to devote to their duties, a lack of engagement on the part of some directors due to their other commitments, Dominance in terms of numbers being representative by the Santa Clara Board of Supervisor and the City of San Jose, as well as frequent tension between directors' fiduciary duties to the VTA as well as with their own elected positions. So based on those discussions at the Governance and Ethics Committee, the group unanimously agreed in whole to finding number 1. So that's what is stated in here. That one, pretty straightforward. And then moving on to the recommendations, which the city manager referenced what the responses can be for those. So recommendation 1C, based on the grand jury report, stated that each of the cities in the county should prepare to deliver to the VTA County Board of Supervisors a written report setting forth its views regarding VTA governances with specific reference to the elements listed in the recommendations. These reports should be completed and delivered prior to December 31st, 2019. So again, having the discussion at the Governance and Ethics Committee and looking at those responses, what is in front of you, the response of the recommendation requires further analysis. And so what was discussed at the committee meeting was the council deciding on if they should move forward with forming an ad hoc committee. Based on putting together that ad hoc committee, the group can further go through the report and further discuss items, including the structure of the transportation agency itself, other structures of similar agencies, board size, terms of service, selection methods, and things of that nature. And that report would, again, need to be completed by the end of the year. Now, moving on to recommendation 1D. Now, this specific recommendation talked about the County of Santa Clara and one or more of the VTA's other constituent agencies should propose enabling legislation, including appropriate amendments to the Public Utilities Code to improve the governance structure of the VTA. This included increasing the director's term of service, term limitations, as well as possibility of appointed directors who are not currently serving as elected officials. So again, this item was discussed at the committee meeting, and based on that discussion, the response before you is the recommendation requires further analysis. One of the discussions that went on was really how effective could these changes be, and will they really impact the way that the VTA is governed? Also discussion about who should head up moving forward with these legislation changes, and there was discussions that Assembly Member Kansen Chu might be a good candidate to do that. And so if an ad hoc committee is also developed, this item could be further discussed through that ad hoc committee, and then the response can be included along with the report that would be prepared. And then lastly, we have recommendation 1E. And so what that really states is in order to provide more continuity in the leadership of the VTA board, the County of Santa Clara and or one or more of the VTA's other constituent agencies should propose enabling legislation amending the Public Utilities Code to provide that the chairperson of the VTA shall be elected for a term of 2 years rather than 1. Again, based on the discussions with the committee, the response before you is that the recommendation requires further analysis. Like the previous recommendation, there was discussion of whether or not these types of changes would really improve the way the VTA is governed. Again, a discussion led to a potential of Assemblymember Kansen Chu leading the effort to change this legislation, as well as further discussing this with the ad hoc committee to finalize a response, and then again include that in the report that would be completed. So based on those discussions at the committee, we've put the responses in under the findings and those 3 recommendations. And what the ultimate recommendation of this staff report before you is that we recommend the City Council approve the response and authorize Mayor Gilmore to submit the city's response to the civil grand jury report by the September 16th, 2019 deadline. So that concludes the presentation. And then I'm here for questions.
Okay, let me see. Councilmember Davis, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Craig, you definitely captured that because you sat there through that meeting and took copious notes. And I really thank you for that, because that was a very lively discussion. And we were definitely not happy. We agree with the findings, and we wanted the full council to really hear that, because we don't know if these recommendations will cure the problem. And I know that our council member O'Neill is the chair, and she was in agreement to make the changes because things are just not going in the right direction. So I just want to thank you again. But Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Okay, there's motion and second. Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember O'Neill, and then Councilmember Hardy.
No.
Councilmember Hardy, and then Councilmember O'Neill.
It was just more of a comment that we have a few of your comments in our recommendation, but it really does look like we said, yes, there's a mess and we're punting. We need more information on everything. I mean, we didn't really make a recommendation, a strong recommendation in the letter on anything. There was just, I'm worried that because we did that, your comments were a little bit more to the point. Especially like 1C, as a constituent agency of VTA, the city should prepare and deliver to VTA a written report setting forth. So this is our recommendation. We're saying we're going to make a report within that, or is this our report?
No, so what we're saying under the recommendation that the council, if they approve this, would be agreeing to form an ad hoc committee.
To make a report.
And yeah, based on that ad hoc committee, they would go through this in much more detail to provide that report back to the presiding judge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill.
Okay, so welcome to my world. So I just wanted to make a few comments on what's been happening, and so obviously this grand jury report was has been in the works for a number of months, and actually before I became aware of that this was a project of the grand jury, that I had already, as part of my initiatives as the board chair this year, called for the formation. I kind of made some very frank comments at my first meeting as board chair of VTA, and I think it was a little bit of a different approach than some of the other chairs have taken in the past. So I think it caught a few people off guard. And so one of the things was that I called to establish a ad hoc committee of the VTA board to look at governance and to look at changing the structure. So that committee has been meeting, and I appointed our colleague, John McAllister from Mountain View, to chair that committee, because John has some very strong opinions about what works and what doesn't work. So let's mix things up a little bit. Let's bring some people in that maybe have a different opinion. And so we have been meeting, and one of the things that we have done is that we have commissioned what will be, I think, a rather robust study through VTA's Auditor General. And we're putting together, they are putting together a work plan, and some parts of it are going to be contracted out. So a lot of the things that are talked about in here, we are, those of us board members are going to we are going to be working with the inspector, since the Auditor General works for the board, just like the city auditor here works for the council. The Auditor General works for the board of VTA. And we have another meeting on Friday. These meetings have all been like 2 to 3 hours of the people going back, the members of the committee and members of the public coming and talking. And it's very interesting, because some of the findings that have been made in previous grand jury reports, not everybody agree, they don't all agree with what the grand jury is saying. Some of us think that there's a lot of merit to it. And the reality is the city of San Jose is over half the population of this county. And then when you look at like the Board of Supervisors having 2 representatives, most frequently, those representatives are from the city of San Jose. So right off the bat, they usually have 7 out of the 12 board members. And that is not to say that just because something is, not all of the San Jose board members always agree. You know, sometimes there's a little bit of dissent there, but the problem is that they're all appointed by the mayor. So depending on, you know, I mean, that's some of the issues, the way we've had people removed from the board in the middle of a board meeting. Like, oops, I just got a message, I'm off, I'm gone, you know. And so the way that each, and it comes down to, like, for Santa Clara, we're part of the Northeast Cities group. So we're with Milpitas, Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara. And each of our cities is putting somebody on that, in that group, in a different manner. And we are, in some ways, are the more kind of low key. We have a letter agreement where we agree to rotate. In the other cities, it's knocked down, drag out political as to who is going to get to represent that city group on the VTA board. And so that's where you get also some of the turnover. You've got, you know, for various political reasons, people coming and going. And I feel sorry for, you know, I think there's a very professional staff at VTA. And I mean, they don't always show it on their faces, but I can kind of see when these little smiles, and all of a sudden somebody's gone, somebody's in, somebody's, you know, and it's like, how are they supposed to be running? You know, one of the things I've pointed out is I am the only representative on the board, other than somebody from the county or the city of San Jose, whose budgets are bigger than VTA's. For most of the cities, the VTA budget is far bigger than their city budget, and some of the scope of the problems. And so, you know, that's even, you know, a kind of a challenge. And one of the things I've pointed out is that for what we call the small cities, a lot of the small city representatives, the people are not only representing their city and being on VTA, but a lot of them are working full-time, just as the challenge has been here. So you add VTA on top, and if that VTA assignment is almost bigger than their city council assignment, you know, so there's all those kinds of issues. So, I mean, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the board committee at VTA is, you know, pursuing in a number of avenues, and including, you know, engaging a study, but a study that will really look at one of the things I've been doing in some of the meetings that I've gone to with the different transit systems around the country is to look at how they govern. And most of, you know, there are some agencies that do it the way that Santa Clara County does, but a lot of them have, like, boards where people are appointed, and they have some kind of background in transportation, and that's their only, they're not like an elected official. And what's really interesting in Utah, for Salt Lake City, they've had some major issues with their transit system, and they've had some scandals with the light rail. And actually, one of our senior leaders at VTA is just gone, and this is her second week as the executive director or general manager for Utah Transit Authority. But their governor intervened, their legislature intervened, and disbanded the board that they had, and they now have a 3-member board that's appointed by the governor, and those people are full-time. And in Salt Lake City, they're making over $100,000 apiece. So it's a highly, you know, paid position. And so everyone's like, whoa, you know. So just to let you know that effort is going on. But I think it's, you know, obviously with BART coming to Santa Clara, and, you know, my desire is to see us really push to start the development of the multimodal station at Great America, since, you know, we are a major point for people that are coming to Santa Clara County via transit systems. So we need to be engaged and involved. So I think, you know, if we want to go ahead and have some kind of, you know, group make some recommendations, I think that's great. But like I said, I just wanted to let you know that there's going to be other work going on.
Thank you, Teresa. And I know that when you were appointed chair of the VTA, you inherited a lot of issues, problems, especially financial major financial deficits of the VTA. And I know you've done your best to try to help things and try to change governance, but I'll tell you, I think one of the basic problems with VTA is that there's an 11-member voting board. Oh, there's an ex officio member too that votes? I don't know, I just looked it up, so. So here you go, you have 5 from the city of San Jose that have consistent seats. And then you have 2 from the county, of which 2 that happen to be ex-San Jose people, city council members. So San Jose dominates the board. Santa Clara, we don't even have a consistent seat. We have to share it and rotate with Sunnyvale and Milpitas. So right then and there, you can see that we are not going to be able to, we have to fight like the smaller cities for equity. And we have some big issues that it's almost impossible for us to get any type of fair share in everything when we're consistently outvoted. And you know, the money can be, you know, from all the taxes and everything else, the money is then diverted to, you know, mainly San Jose issues because they control the board. So that is the inherent problem there that we need to weigh in on, and we need to, you know, ask for greater equity for the rest of the county, because all of the issues are not in San Jose, they're all throughout the county, as we can tell, all up and down the peninsula. And I know our friends in Los Altos and Mountain View and Cupertino and others are fighting, you know, to help ease a lot of these traffic problems, and the VTA isn't responding. Because again, the governance structure, as the grand jury so, you know, well pointed out, is geared towards San Jose. So do we, I'm going to ask Craig, are you looking for or city manager, an ad hoc committee? I'd like to serve on that ad hoc committee. Are we doing that now, or is that something we can do later, or at governance, or what? I know we have, did we have a motion?
Yes.
A motion and a second
For staff
for the
recommendation.
staff recommendation. Do we want to deal with that ad hoc now or later?
We can, once we have more information, we can bring
Okay.
it back to council in terms of what are the next steps for the ad hoc activity.
I think we should, you know, meaningfully put together a report back that really describes how we believe that the system and the governance can be better and be more equitable, especially for Santa Clara.
So with the input, if the motion is approved, with the input, we'll reflect that. We'll get a letter to the mayor for signature and for forwarding to the court by September 16th.
Okay, Councilmember Chahal, you have some comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I do concur, like this being a very large part of responsible for our transportation within the whole of the Greater Bay Area over here. And I'm surprised we do not have any expert board members in that field. Like all of the appointed members are non-experts, like elected officials, or like Chairperson Teresa O'Neill. Like she must have had to ramp up her studies to come up to the speed of that. So I am surprised that we do not have any recognized experts in the field of transportation on the board. And some of the findings are very dot on. Like we do need to have experts which are expert in that field so that we get good opinion and good governance from them. So to an extent, like at least 50% of the board should be from the experts in the field so that we know exactly what problems are or how to solve these problems. And as Councilmember Teresa O'Neill mentioned, chairperson of the VTA, we should learn from other such boards, like how they are doing. And we need this problem to be solved sooner than later. And it's time that we take care of traffic issues and the transportation issues. And this is the one reason, like we are unable to take out people out of their cars. Like if we have an efficient VTA transportation system in the valley, it will go a long way to solve our traffic issues and other stuff. I concur with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Watanabe. Oh, before, thank you, Councilmember Chahal. You reminded me that Teresa O'Neill spent years on the policy advisory board to VTA, so she's as close to an expert as we have.
Yep.
She's put in all of the many, many, many hours, right, Teresa? I know that. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of comments. I think it's a really good suggestion to have somebody at the legislative level to, to be able to reach out to and possibly assist. Have we reached out to Assemblymember Chu to see if he's interested in assisting? You have? Yes. Okay. Has he shown any interest? Good, okay. And I think, the suggestion about having a chairperson on the board elected to a 2-year term, I mean, it makes complete sense, and I think if anybody were to be that person, I think it would be Teresa O'Neill. After all of the time and dedication that you've given over the last year, Teresa, I think you're deserving of that position, so I hope they'll follow through with it. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We have a motion and second for staff recommendation for the letter. Is there, do we have any cards from the public? Okay, if there is any member of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. No? Okay, motion second, please register your vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you for the report. Next, we have reports of members and special committees.
Mayor,
Yes. Councilmember Davis.
thank you. The Triton Museum is having, so I need you to mark your calendars, everybody in television land. Saturday, August 31st, from 12 until 4, a family community day, and on Friday, September 13th, from 6 to 8 p.m. for an artist reception. This is the first exhibition to reflect the diversity of our community. Executive Director Jill Myers would like to thank the Sikh Community Foundation for the contribution supporting both the Family Day and the artist reception. The art is reflective of the Sikh community entitled Expressions of Divinity. So I want to see everybody there because this is a big thing. The Triton usually likes to showcase California artists, but now we're all together in one happy family. So this is the first of its kind, so I hope that everybody will attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hardy.
I just wanted to make the point that I did go to the mental health for teens that Sunnyvale put on the other day in their park. It was very interesting. I think it was more useful, more as a school teacher. But also, I had the opportunity to go on a day-and-a-half trip up to Hetch Hetchy and to tour the entire water situation. We are one of the wholesale buyers from the Hetch Hetchy system that San Francisco owns. And only 3 times a year do they give a tour inside of the dam, and I got to do that. They wouldn't let you take pictures inside, but that was pretty cool. And it gave a much better understanding of the water system there. Then I also on last Saturday, I went to our water purification plant, and they are doing tours to the public. There's no cost there, but to help people understand the purification of the wastewater and that we're doing, and it was excellently done. There were probably about 35 people in each tour, and they do that on Saturdays, and I would suggest anyone doing that, especially since we own part of it.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to mention a few things. One, we had National Night Out with our police department, and it was the largest national night out that we've had in Santa Clara. I think there was, Assistant Chief, was there like 54, 56 neighborhoods that participated this year, 54? And it was just a tremendous event. So thank you to the police department and all the neighborhoods that got together for National Night Out. It was great. Secondly, we had our street dance in the Franklin Mall, Franklin Square as they call it. I keep calling it Franklin Mall, which was bigger and better than ever. So I want to thank our Parks and Recreation Department, our staff, our Public Works, our Public Safety, That was right after the Gilroy shooting, and it was a little bit tense. There were some people that were a little bit afraid, but I really want to thank our public safety for making us feel comfortable. I saw Councilmember O'Neill, Councilmember Chahal there, and it was really, I've gotten a lot of really positive comments about street dance and people feeling safe and really feeling part of the community. So just wanted to mention that. St. Lawrence the Martyr, they just celebrated their 60th anniversary of having their church in Santa Clara, so they had a big event. I want to congratulate St. Lawrence on that. Also, lastly, there was a mural unveiling at the Santa Clara Community School that I know Councilmember Watanabe was there and Councilmember O'Neill. Were you there? Yeah, you were. Councilmember, no, you weren't. Councilmember O'Neill. And so there were students from Wilcox High School that painted a mural on one of the walls at the community day school, and we had members of our cultural advisory commission there. They're thinking of getting pictures taken and maybe putting them on banners in the school, but they want to commission. It was commissioned by board member Mark Richardson, who did that with the Wilcox High School students, and they want to do other murals throughout the city. But the artistry is just incredible and unbelievable. So I just wanted to mention that as well. There's a lot that's gone on in the last month, but those are just some highlights. All right, I don't see anyone else. So next we have City Manager Executive Director Report.
I want to start by just acknowledging that in your packet, you have an updated monthly report on all of the council and board referrals that we're carrying. And I have been sharing with you over the last 2 weeks the volume of Public Records Act requests that we're getting. We're in a very high peak period. If I'll just give you an example of 2 weeks ago, we had 182 unique records requests. Last week, it ballooned up to 282. And I just wanted to report that through the very hard work, I'm looking at Simrat, and Nadine's not here, but we did bring that back down to 168, although you can see week to week how much it can peak. And so we're gonna do all of our efforts to keep it as low as we can and continue to be responsive. I also wanted to acknowledge that we started a new pilot program for council questions in an effort to be transparent around what type of issues come up and how to resolve the council questions in advance at the staff level. We will be posting the council questions that were raised for this packet tomorrow on the city's website. And then for next week, we'll go through the cycle again where we receive those questions at the administrative level. We'll publish them and make them available here as post-agenda material so that there is transparency around the types of questions that are asked. And then the last is I just have a couple of announcements, if you'll indulge me, just because it's been some time and there's been a lot of good work. I want to acknowledge our Parks and Rec staff and Cynthia Bohorkis in my office for really taking seriously and acting quickly the issues around the cemetery and maintenance. This was an issue that was brought up by our residents, and we were able to get volunteers as well as to redivert some staff resources so that our cemeteries could be cleaned up very quickly when it was brought to our attention. I also want to acknowledge out of a council referral that came out of Councilmember Watanabe. They're online right now. There is the opportunity to respond to a community survey relative to illegal street racing. The survey closes on August 26th, and it would be important and for everyone to be able to respond so that we have good information as we go forward with policy development. On August 15th, there is the public input session for Charter Review Committee, and just a reminder that those sessions are being live streamed. And do you want to add something?
Yeah. The August 15th meeting already took place. So I just wanted to announce that the next meeting is going to be September 21st.
I highlighted the wrong part of my, September 21st. That meeting is from 12 to 2 at Northside Branch Library. And also right now, if there's any students watching, just given the talent that we had in the room earlier, Silicon Valley Power, does have an open grant application period for students interested in studying public power utility, and those applications close on October 15th. And my last item is our Art and Wine Festival is September 14th and 15th, and make sure that's also on calendar. So with that, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Okay, and so that leads us to our adjournment, and
Madam Mayor, can I
yes.
I missed the previous point on reporting on something. Can I be brief on that?
Wait, should we vote on an exception to the agenda? Go, or no, go ahead.
I did attend one of the events where Kenson Chu, Assemblymember Kenson Chu, got the funding around $3.735 million for the five cities to cope up with the car break-ins. And our city got $750,000 from that, and we thank Assemblymember Kenson Chu for that. Also attended a couple of events at the Indian Consulate for the 73rd Independence Day for that, and also at the Fremont. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and that leads us to our adjournment. So if you bear with me for a moment, I'm asking that we adjourn in memories of the following individuals. First is Richard Bernard Harrison, Santa Clara resident. Richard was born on September 1st, 1931. Richard served in the United States Navy during the Korean War. Richard married Kathleen K. Smith in 1958 and then moved to California from Colorado. Richard was a member of St. Martin of Tours, St. Vincent de Paul, and Peace and Justice. He was a volunteer tutor at Elmwood Correctional Center. Richard loved travel. He visited all 50 states, Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Caribbean, Central, and South America. Richard was also an avid cyclist. Richard passed away on July 19, 2019. Richard is survived by his loving wife, Kay, his children, Mark, Patricia, Colleen, Paul, Christopher, and Thomas, and 9 grandchildren. He was a really, really nice man. Next, ask that we adjourn in memory of Anthony Tony George Fernandez, Santa Clara resident. Tony was born on April 26, 1928. Tony went to St. Clair's Grammar School and Santa Clara High School, where he was captain of the basketball team. Tony wed his high school sweetheart, Eldine, and they enjoyed 70 happy years of marriage. Tony, along with his best friend, Vic Mazzucco, began making cabinets in Vic's garage, which eventually in 1957 became Vic and Tony's Cabinet Shop, and later, with additional partners, expanded into Santa Clara Lumber and Millwork. Tony loved Western and war movies and always smiled and sang to country music. Family vacations and mentoring young people gave him joy. Tony was a great family man, devoted father, and loving grandfather and great-grandfather. His family and friends will always remember him as determined, hardworking, funny, and generous. Tony passed away on July 19, 2019. Tony is survived by his loving wife, Eldine, his children, Chris, Mark, Patty, and Liz, 5 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. And lastly, like to ask that we adjourn in honor of Audrey Going, longtime Santa Clara community member. Audrey was born on June 26, 1927. Audrey gracefully filled the role of nurse, hostess, and homemaker to family and friends. Audrey passed away on July 21, 2019. Audrey is survived by her loving husband, E. Jackson Going Jr., her 3 children, and 7 grandchildren. And finally, I'd like to ask that we have a moment of silence for fallen police officers. At this time, we would like to offer our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of Mario Cicello Rega and Andre Moy, who were killed in the line of duty. Also, Italian police officer Deputy Brigadier Mario Cicello Rega, 35, was killed on July 26, 2019, while responding to a call. California Highway Patrol Officer Andre Moye, 33, was killed on August 12, 2019 in Riverside on the 215 freeway during a traffic stop. Let us please have a moment of silence in their memory. So that leads us to an adjournment. If I could ask for a motion to adjourn in all their memories. Motion and a second to adjourn. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming.